and welcome to another exciting edition of Best MTG Decks Ever. I'm your host, Joseph, and today I have the pleasure of bringing to you a Korvold deck. I call it Spinning Gold Coins, because we use a bunch of treasures in order to just continuously do stuff and kind of like go infinite, sort of. So let's take a look at Korvold and see what we're working with. He is 2 colorless, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green. Whenever Korvold enters the battlefield or attack, sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and draw a card. And this is what the deck is all about. It's all about putting a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and drawing a card. Let's take a look at the creatures. We have a bunch of mana dorks that will help us get Korvold out onto the battlefield. It will also give us some fodder for sacrifice effects, which will allow us to draw more cards and also do some other stuff. Here is an example of one of our sack outlets, Viscera Seer. So every time we sack a creature, we can scry 1. We are running cards like Charming Scoundrel, which will allow us to create a treasure token. We want to create as many treasure tokens as we can, because every time we sack a treasure token, we get to draw a card, and we create mana, which allows us to cast the cards that we're drawing, which will create more treasures, which will sack those, which will draw more cards, and we keep on going. The goal is to start this treasure sacking and drawing outlet thing, and then get a couple of key cards onto the battlefield, which will allow us to go somewhat infinite, or just kind of keep the engine going. That's why I call it spinning gold coins. So you get a Burgie every time you cast a spell. You're sacking treasures, you're drawing cards, and then you're getting a little bit of extra mana, which will allow you to cast more things, to create more treasures, to draw more cards, which will create more mana, and it just keeps going. Something like Zorn is also good. Every treasure that we create 2 treasures. Pitiless Plunderer is really good. When we have a sack engine and something out there, we can just start sacking it, creating treasures, sacking treasures, drawing cards, getting more answers, and then we just keep going off. Stormkilling Artist works in the same way. Every single sorcery or instant that we cast, we will create a treasure token, which will allow us to sack it, gain mana, draw cards, cast more stuff, keep going. Goldspan Dragon will allow our treasures to create 2 mana, so every treasure that we sack, we get to draw 1, create 2 mana, which will allow us to cast even more stuff and create more treasures, and da-da-da-da-da. You've already heard the same thing. For sorceries, we've got a bunch of tutors, Imperial Seal, Demonic Tutor. We have some tutors that have sack activations for them, like Diabolic Intent and Eldritch Evolution. We're also running a bunch of rituals, stuff like Infernal Plunge, where we can sack a creature to add 3 red mana to our mana pool. It allows us to ramp, and we get the sack, which will allow us to draw the card, and we go on with the drawing and sacking and creating more mana thing. We are running Seize the Spotlight, which will work good as long as you have a sack outlet on the board. We cast Seize the Spotlight, and it reads, each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. Each player who chose Fame gain control of a creature that player controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures and they gain haste until end of turn. For each player who chose Fortune, you draw a card and create a treasure token. So essentially what this reads is, if you've got a sack outlet on the board, you're either going to be sacking the best creature each opponent has, or they're going to allow you to create a treasure token and draw a card, and then sacking that treasure token will allow you to draw 2 cards, and then you can keep going and casting and sacking. We are running an interesting card. It's Inner Fire. Inner Fire reads, add 1 red mana for each card in your hand. So the way that we would use this is, we've got Korvold on the field. We've managed to get up to like 5 or 6 treasures. We just sack all the treasures, draw 5 or 6 cards, cast this, and then we get a bunch of red mana. And then the cards that we drew, we can start casting those to get more mana, create more treasures, keep on doing stuff. We are running Chandra's Ignition. This is one of your win cons. So let's say that we've got Korvold on the battlefield. You just keep giving them +1/+1/+1/+1. You just keep casting cards, creating treasures, sacking them, and you just got this engine going. And now Korvold is like a 20/20 or a 30/30 or something. Now we cast Chandra's Ignition. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. Board wipes all of our opponents, as long as their creatures aren't above like 20/20 or 30/30 or whatever, wherever you're at. And then the opponents will take a ton of damage as well. For instance, we're running stuff that's similar to what we had in sorceries. We've got tutors, we've got sack, we've got rituals that have sack activations. We've got regular rituals. We've got drawing, creating treasure tokens with a sack activation. All right, let's look at artifacts. We are running a bunch of mana artifacts. The only artifacts to really note here are Ashnod's Altar, which is a sack outlet. So when we're sacrificing creatures, it's giving us mana to allow us to cast more things, which will give us more treasures, which will allow us to sack more, which will allow us to draw more. Same with Phyrexian Altar. It gives us colored mana instead of colorless mana like with Ashnod's Altar. And then we've also got Aetherflux Reservoir. Here's another win con. You have Aetherflux Reservoir on the battlefield. You start spinning your gold coins, doing all your things, and you just keep casting spells, and eventually Aetherflux will get so you'll be gaining so much life for each spell that you cast that you just start sniping people. And for enchantments, we've got Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It just creates treasure tokens. However, we can do some stuff when we've got Reflection of Kiki-Jiki on the board. Then we can start creating tokens that we can either sacrifice to start chains, or you're going to be copying something like Dockside Extortionist, which is going to give you a ton of treasures, or you copy something like Burgi, which gives you more mana for every spell that you cast, which allows you to start the chain. And then another enchantment here, this one's really awesome. It's really cool. So it's called There and Back Again. 3 colorless, 2 red. The first one doesn't really matter. Second one's kind of nice for ramp, but here's the third one. This is what we want. Create Smaug, a legendary 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying and haste, and when this creature dies, create 14 treasure tokens. So you cast this out there, and you eventually get to creating Smaug, and when Smaug is on the battlefield, then you do something like you have a sack outlet, you do something like Infernal Plunge on him, so you sack him, you'll get 14 treasures and 3 red mana, and then you can sack those 14 treasures with Korvold on the battlefield, you draw 14 cards, he gets plus 14, plus 14, you get 14 mana, and then you can start casting. It's pretty much like you get to do a lot of stuff. Well, that is the deck. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's just all about creating treasures, sacking them, drawing cards, and casting more stuff, and you just keep going and spinning those gold coins. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.